Awesome. Thank you everybody for coming. This may be our biggest film session by far, and more people keep coming on, which is exciting. So thanks, Donna. As she mentioned, I'm Molly Zeff. Scott and I are co-facilitating again, which is exciting. And I just wanted to briefly, as I did the last time when I led one of these, to frame the kind of mood of the evening for us the next hour or so. Basically, I drew a lot of inspiration from the film itself in how to approach the discussion. And what I mean by that is, for me, one of the most powerful parts of the film, I know there were a lot of powerful parts, and I'm looking forward to hearing yours as well, but one of my most powerful parts was when a woman, I forget which one, maybe JJ can even remind us, I'll introduce JJ in a moment actually. I remember a woman saying that if we just saw each other on the street, if we were just going to say hi walking along, and we didn't know each other's politics at all, we'd be perfectly friendly and warm. And I wanted to basically frame this as, let's kind of look at each other and respond to each other tonight as if we were just meeting each other on the street, as if we don't have any preconceptions or, you know, ideas about what a conservative person is like or what a liberal is like. We're all very nuanced in our views. Many of us hold somewhere in the purple part of the spectrum even. And I want to invite people to kind of view each other and responding to each other the way you would if you were just walking outside and said hi. And so that way we can kind of come to each other with some of the warmth and the friendliness that I think Braver Angels discussions and debates are known for, which I really love and embrace, and what has really drawn me to stay involved these last several months. So I also want to mention, before we begin with the first question, that we have a really exciting guest here tonight. JJ, do you want to say anything about yourself? He was in the film, you may recognize him. And he's famous now, obviously, and about to be more famous. So JJ, I just want to give you a chance to say anything about, you know, yourself or how you came to participate in the film, perhaps.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on. I'm really excited to be here and be a part of this with all of you guys. Everybody from the Boston group, we were all part of a casting committee in Boston, you know, like if you were ever going to participate in movies or TV shows. And that's how Tom and Larry found us, was through that casting agency. And I think they started with 400 or 500 people. And then from there, they sent out a list of questions that were politically motivated. You're going back a couple of years. I wish I could tell you guys what the questions were. I don't remember. But we all went through this question and answer phase where we would send them in, and then they'd, you know, knock it from say 400 down to 200, and then they'd send out another round. So there was like 3 or 4 rounds worth of questions and ideas and thoughts and comments before they finally got it down to the 12 of us. And so I just happened to be one of the 12, you know, one of the last ones remaining. And then from there, you know, they scheduled it a couple of months out to make sure we were all available, and we all spent a weekend together. I would assume Chicago went in a similar fashion. I'm not sure. I didn't ask, but that's how I got here.
Awesome. Thank you, JJ. And before we really dive into the first of the questions, I also wanted to mention that because we are a massive group, 186 and counting, I just want to mention that we're going to have to keep responses a little shorter than usual. I will time people at roughly a minute for each person's talking. I hate to keep it that short. I'd love to let people go on for 2 or 3 minutes, but it'll optimize, you know, just getting more people to participate. I think we ended our last film discussion that I co-facilitated with probably 8 questions remaining, and I always, you know, want to make sure everyone gets a chance to talk if they're interested. And if you have any issues with the raising hand feature, feel free to private message Donna Murphy, myself, Molly Zeff, or Scott Sharon, and we can send a quick reminder on how to do the raising hand feature. And lastly, before I give the first question, I want to mention that Braver Angels is an organization with a small staff. A lot of the things are volunteer run, but we do have a small staff. And also that it is, if you're interested in joining, it's only $12 a year to join, which makes it super affordable. I love that part of the work that we do here. And I also want to mention that in light of, you know, some of the other work we do that does cost money besides just paying for staff, it would be lovely if people, after tonight or sometime in the next few weeks, want to give towards helping fund some of the workshops and local alliances and high school and college programs. And we will put a link in the chat this evening to donate to this kind of work if you want to pursue it, help us pursue it to an even greater extent. So now that the kind of intro things are out of the way, I want to start with something pretty basic, and I'm going to invite maybe 3 or 4 people to respond to this verbally, but also invite people in general to use the chat to, to throw in a word or a phrase. So the question I want to start with, just as I thought this was in some ways, it was a, very policy-oriented film and building connections across the divide, but I also felt like it was a very powerful film from an emotional perspective. And so I just want to invite people to share, generally speaking, what feelings were evoked in you as you watched the film. And I'm curious to see what the full range is. So feel free to take a moment, think about what you were feeling as you watch. Awesome, I'm seeing hope. And if people want to raise your hands, I'm also going to call on a few people as well. Okay, great. Susan, Lindsey, feel free to unmute yourself.
Hi, I thought it was so inspiring. I am so grateful for seeing it, and was just blown away by the progress that these human beings made towards each other in that very short time.
Awesome, thank you. And I want to ask Gloria Carbo to go ahead and chime in as well.
Yeah, I have to say that it actually evoked tears for me, tears of joy, because, and a great deal of hope that I have not felt for several months about our country, because I believe very much in the need for all of us to come back together so we can continue being the United States of America. So thank you.
That's awesome, thank you. And I guess, I don't know if I'm pronouncing this right, but Gabor Kiss, love that name. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, it's a Hungarian name. Okay, I had mixed feelings about the movie. I found it frustrating to watch because there's a lot of people talking over each other, a lot of people not being able to make their points completely before somebody else jumped in. I would have liked to see a little bit more active moderation in the discussions.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Yeah, and I appreciate that there's a lot of nuance in your responses, and I'm seeing a lot of people in the chat say there was sort of a transition over the course of time, frustration or dubious, then encouraged, helplessness early on. And I apologize that I'm not gonna be able to read all of them, but there are clearly some very divergent responses to it. And then Gilbert Polk, and then we'll have time for 2 more, and we're gonna switch to the next question. So Gilbert, go for it.
Hi, thank you. I just want to say, I thought it was brilliant how you, or I must have read that you started the discussion outside politics, find their common ground as human beings. And it didn't surprise me that in the end, people did find their common ground, because I really, personally, my heart says none of us are so politically driven that we just want to hate the other side because of politics. It's just our communication gets in the way. And so I commend you guys for the way that you're starting the communication. It's beautiful.
It's awesome, thank you. And then I'm gonna say Jason and Whitefire, and then we're gonna move on to the next question actually. So people I didn't call on, feel free to put yours into the chat as well. So Jason Tisch, you wanna go for it?
Sure, you asked about emotions. It made me feel a lot of emotions when I heard something that I did or didn't disagree with. But then when I saw this, the person's humanity who said that thing, and saw them like be a real person and show some emotion, that overpowered any disagreement or frustration that I felt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a little more personal than say like an argument on Facebook, perhaps. All right, and Whitefire, you're gonna be the last person for this particular question.
Our future vision of what we want, of unity and a way that we want it, is happening now. It doesn't happen in the future, it happens now. And so I see us having communities, white ass Sonoma County meeting up with the Black community, meeting up with the, you know, Asian community, et cetera, because we have to do that, because we need to do that, because we want to do that, because we want to be neighbors. You know, we want to share tacos, we want to share rugulas, we want to share all the things that are important to us. So, yep.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. Thank you. Those were some great answers. I love this spread, and I really appreciate the honesty, both from people who spoke from the heart here and also people who are speaking in the chat, that there's this is not an easy film to watch. I see many of you were frustrated or, you know, having a tough time with it, and then a lot of people felt hope from it. So I think one of the things that for me felt really true is all of those emotions that we're naming now are all simultaneously existing in many of us, right? It's not like, oh, this is so hopeful all the time. A lot of times, you know, having these tough conversations bring out both kinds of responses in ourselves. I want to move on to a question that was asked in the film. So I'm kind of going to ask you to take, you know, the role that JJ took for a moment. Basically, you know, the film began, and so I want to similarly, you know, pose early on in our conversation the same question with a question of what makes you proud to be an American. And I'm going to ask, thank you, Donna, to this one, that we not include the election of Obama or Trump in our answer, only because that answer came up so many times in the film. I want to push people to go a little deeper, but also because, you know, sometimes an election itself and pride in the election itself can be inherently divisive, as I'm sure we've all felt recently. So beyond the election of Obama or Trump, what is your proudest moment as an American? And I'm going to ask people to focus on this question specifically for the next 5 minutes or so. And again, I want to invite people to both raise your hand, as I see a few have, and also to put some things in the chat as well if you have some responses. Cool. Okay, Mindy, take us away with the first answer.
Hi, so I'm an independent artist, and I think that I'm proud to be an American because of the American dream is that you can really work your way up and start from nothing and accomplish so many things, like being an entrepreneur and stuff like that. And I feel like, I mean, maybe you can do that in other countries, but it's, I don't want to say it's quite common in America, but it's the American dream.
Thank you so much. Great. And Bonnie, go for it.
I'm echoing something I read in the chat box by Robin and probably a few others, but whenever there's a natural catastrophe or something like that, and people from all around the country run to help, and not just like Red Cross volunteers, but individual citizens and companies. And we also often send people overseas. There were firefighters who went to Australia, for example, and that just makes me feel so great about our country and Americans volunteering quite spontaneously.
Awesome. Yeah, and that came up in the chat as well, the volunteering part. Let's see. Donald Malnati, haven't heard from you yet, Donald.
Hello there. Since I've been reading more about the history of the United States, and I'm also a business person, so I started paying more attention to the business end of it. And I really came to feel and understand how the United States is a huge and sort of chaotic country that holds together and creates an enormous amount of power and energy and positive production in the world. And I'm proud of that, you know, the fact that we hold together as a country, even though it's a big, massive chaos sometimes. And I think it can be a strength. And the more that we can sort of align that, I think would be better.
Thank you, and Sam, and then Trace.
Something.
Sam Carlton.
Yeah. For me, I mean, just when you ask the question, politically, I've changed over the years, and wasn't always a fan of
into different races and faiths.
Oh, I'm calling Sam Carlton. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. Yeah, I've changed my politics have changed over the years, and I was not a fan of Bill Clinton back when he was president, but I saw a couple of years ago how he admitted his mistake of giving rice to Haiti and the harm that did. And I felt so prideful in him. So, I mean, the most powerful man in the world being able to reflect back on a mistake that he made and sincerely and honestly say, hey, I screwed up. And I really wish we had a lot more of that from our leaders. And I was very, very prideful when I heard him be able to stand up and say that. That was just so beautiful and so awesome.
Thank you. Yeah. And Trace, you are going to be our second to last person on this question.
Great. Primarily the freedom that our founders came here to find. Granted, it had some problems when they came to it, but it's how different our country is in its origins from everyone else. You know, we're not tribal, which is why it causes some of the problems that we have. But the diversity that has led to, the melting pot that we are, and the Constitution that's created because of that makes me very proud to be an American.
Awesome. And last one for this question is Dennis. So Dennis, feel free to unmute yourself.
Yes, I was just able to go to Paris a couple years ago and went to a museum there, and one whole room was dedicated to D-Day and us coming to free so many of the help in World War II with the freedom. And it made me proud to be an American and help, and just thankful for all of our veterans. And I'm a hospice nurse. My husband's a veteran, and we honor our veterans. Often they are World War II veterans at the end of life. And so it's been a blessing to be amongst our veterans and part of our country's history.
Yeah, thank you. I'm seeing a lot of interesting, cool answers in the chat as well that I haven't heard here, as well as some people challenging the question itself, which I really appreciate. I want to move on, but before I do, I actually want to just ask you, JJ, can you clarify what you mean by casting? There was some concern about what that meant in the sense.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw that.
You actually went silent for some reason. I'm not sure why.
That's odd. He's not muted.
No, I'm not. It's my internet. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
JJ, why don't you try one more time, and then if need be, we can come back to you. But feel free to try one more time.
Hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So none of us are professional actors, and the show was not scripted in any way, shape, or form. We had no clue what we were walking into. The fact that we belonged to a casting agency was because we might have all done small bits and pieces here or there over the years. They just needed a ground zero to start from to find a group of people. That's all I meant by that. It wasn't a casted, scripted show. We literally had no idea who each other were or what it entailed until we got there. It was very honest and very open. And like I said, they had to weed us out from a pile of people that was like 400 from the beginning. And that was all through politically based questions. It was them going to an agency was just a way for them to find a group of people. That's all that was, you know? So I hope no one feels that we had an agenda or that we were told what to say or what to argue about or what to agree and disagree on. It wasn't like that. I hope that got through.
Yeah, it wasn't. I think what also was selected for, and correct me if I'm wrong, is diversity of viewpoints. And you know, we'll get to the diversity piece of the cast as well, but basically they need to quote cast, and there's not a better word for it, only in the sense that they can't take everybody who wants to do it. So they have to have some criteria to select among people. But like JJ said, they don't tell you what to do or what to say and so on.
Exactly.
I am going to move on to the next question. Feel free, people who have their hand up, feel free to keep it on. Actually, Scott, you want to go for it with this one?
Sure. You can hear me okay, right?
Yes.
Okay, great. So JJ, I'm going to pose this question to you first and then to the group at large. What question or questions do you wish could have been asked but weren't?
Questions that I wish could have been asked but weren't. See, what you guys have to remember is you saw a very condensed 2-hour version when I was there for 72 hours. I don't think there was a question that was not asked. There might not have been a question that made the film. You know, if you guys have questions that you want to know, they had hundreds of hours of film just from the weekend that me and my cast spent there. They must have had that same hundreds of hours of film from the cast in Chicago. I mean, we talked about everything. The first thing that my cast asked when we all showed up and met each other, 6 white men and 6 white women, is how come there were no African Americans in our cast? That was the first thing when you talk about diversity. You know, we wondered that. Tom and Larry had set that up on purpose because they already knew how they were going to cast Chicago, and they didn't want us to be locked down with race because they knew that was going to play a role in Chicago. So they set it up in their own ways, but you guys just weren't privy to all of what we went through in the 2 hours or 1 hour that you guys got to see. We spoke about the economy. We spoke about immigration. We spoke about racism. We talked about everything. I think every single question and topic that you could have imagined was posed to us. You guys just didn't all get the privilege, I guess, to see it all, you know? Hopefully you will. I know that there's a lot more footage and a lot more questions and answers. And I saw one gentleman say with the scripted comment, we were talking over each other. They just didn't get to show you all of it. There was a lot of talking over, and then people would stop and you'd hear an entire viewpoint. You know, I really wish you guys could have been a privy and a part of all of it because it was such a great experience. You know, it really was. As far as a question that didn't make the cut in the beginning, when they asked us about, you know, what's your proudest moment as an American, they also asked, what was your least proud moment as an American? I said my answer in the show and what was on film was that I'm always proud to be an American, and there was never a moment where I wasn't. I did have some embarrassing international scandals like the Abu Ghraib prison incident in Iraq and stuff like that. And some people brought up Trump's election as their most, you know, the worst time, least proud moment as an American. The answers were all across the place, but that was one question you guys didn't get to see tonight, you know, that we went through. But I mean, we talked about everything, honest to God. I don't think there was a subject unturned during that time frame.
Okay, appreciate it. I'll change that for the group. Since JJ said that there was several hours of film we didn't get to see, was there anyone that would have liked to have seen something included that wasn't?
Yeah, I think when you're talking about a subject, it's important that you have people involved in that subject who are the subject of it. In other words, for example, immigration came up as one of the subject matters, if you like, but there was no immigrants there. So how can you understand that experience and talk about that experience if they were not there? And when I say immigrants, I don't mean that your parents came. I mean that you are an immigrant to the country and you're feeling something, and whatever is going to be, you know, whatever laws or whatever opinions are out there are about you personally. And so if you want to try and understand immigration, why not have someone that is actually experiencing it?
For whatever reason, I'm not seeing hands raised on the screen in front of me. So if someone else.
Looks like Allison or
Okay.
Susan is. Allison, you want to go next?
Okay.
Sure. It seems to me that whether we're red or blue, that we are consuming different media. And I'm very concerned that I see people on, I see the president promoting conspiracy theories, and I see a lot of his followers believing those conspiracy theories. And I don't know how we can move forward if we can't even agree on what the facts are. And I would love to see discussion of that. That I would have liked to have seen that in the film.
Scott, are you able to see people now, or you want me to call people?
You may have to call. Allison did show up, but like, yeah, I'm not seeing anyone there. So Susan, let's do one more person, then we'll go to the next one.
Susan, you are going to be next for this.
Talking about me, Susan Lindsey?
Yeah, exactly.
I wanted to ask JJ, and is there other participants from the film here? I couldn't understand if there were. Is there more?
Unfortunately, we had Layla coming, but she had to cancel tonight due to a family emergency.
Okay, I wanted to ask JJ a couple of things. What would he recommend people like me do after seeing something like this that was so inspiring to, try, maybe not duplicate it, but to do something in our own circles that include people that are, conservative or liberal, different religions, different races, in our own circle, so that we can begin as a nation to do this on the small scale. And I'd also like to ask JJ what he has done since this. Like, has he done anything
All right,
that,
sure.
kind of promotes this kind of idea just on a small scale that we could maybe copy?
So that actually was our next question. And folks who have questions for JJ, I'm going to try to squeeze them in. I'm going to piggyback to Susan and say, I guess we're kind of switching a little early to our next one. So then the question is basically bringing it back. How did you change and how did you bring it back to your community? And as someone pointed out in the chat, this can feel really hard to see people who like build these amazing relationships over this long weekend. But then we're not all, we're watching it, but we're not all part of that. So I'm going to actually add a third element. So I'm going to make this really hard for you, JJ. So first was, how did you change? How did you bring it back? And then also, what is your advice for us on bringing it back, given that we're not all engaged in this depth of relationship that are mediated and so on?
Okay. How did I change? I heard some people from both casts say that this was a life-changing experience. And that's something that's, when you say life-changing, that's a pretty big thing. So I wouldn't say life-changing. It wasn't life-changing for me, but what it was for me was very, very much perspective change. I have a lot more tolerance and a lot more patience for people. I used to get sick of people when all they talked about was politics, even if I agreed with them. It was just one of those things where all you were going to get from somebody was this. I'm a lot more tolerant of people now, no matter which side they're on. And as far as how to bring it back, I think the best thing that you can do if you want to have small group chats is really listen. Let somebody speak. Don't cut them off. Don't cut them short. Let them say their piece, and they let you say yours. Like I said, the best thing that I found at the end of our group, at the end of our show, was that we all wanted the same things for this country, and we seem to tend to argue on the minutia and the details on how to get there. So what did I do myself personally? I'm following some of my own advice. I didn't like it when no one would give Trump a chance. I'm going to give President-elect Biden a chance. I want to see what he can do before I'm going to condemn him and his entire administration. I want to see how he does before I start saying I don't like him just because he's, from a different party or this, that, or the other thing. But I think really listening and seeing people as people and not as politics is huge. And that's what we did on the show. Was we all met as a group of strangers, and we left as a group of friends that still to this day get together once a year, and hang out and have fun. we see the people, not the politics. And those are the small things you can do. You know, you can really listen, and you can hope that people are going to let you speak as well. And you can start to see people and not just the politics. You know, at the end of the day, we all pretty much want the same thing. And I think if we as a people can do it, then maybe our elected officials at some point will start to bridge some divides. I hope I'm not losing you guys, because it looks like my screen's freezing here.
No, you're fine.
Okay.
We're good.
And to the last point, JJ, like, how do you recommend people bring back the lessons from the film to their community, given that we're not all in these relationships and facilitated and so on?
Nobody's going to be as drastic as me. I got rid of social media. I don't look at it anymore. I don't get stuck on it. I eliminated my Facebook. You know, those are some of the things I did. That's pretty drastic, you know, dropping your social media. But like you guys brought up earlier, and I saw it in the chats, where we get our media from, there's so many things that play into it. You know, I find myself a lot less stressed not looking at Facebook every 15 minutes, you know. So that's what I did. I don't know what you guys can do. I can't speak for anybody else, but I can just say that when you can see people as people, it means a lot more than just seeing them as a color or as a party, or even thinking that because they vote this way that they're, you know, not tolerant, or they are. Those are just all crazy thoughts and beliefs that we somehow seem to hold. You know, it's not indicative of every single person.
Thank you. And I want to give Richard, go for it, a chance to chime in.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with JJ. I took the Facebook app off my phone about a month ago and started meditating extra in the evening. And I was more peaceful for the last 3 weeks than I have been in 5 years. But I loved this film. At first, I could hardly watch it. My wife was watching it. I kind of had something else to do. And it was like I was angry, defensive, closed-minded. But I went back and watched the rest of it. And in one short hour, I became more compassionate, understanding, and open-minded. And one thing I'm going to conclude with is that I at one point said I might have to renounce my citizenship depending on who wins. And I thought, well, I can't do that. I need Medicare. I need that. We got a house in that. And I thought, well, I can renounce my citizenship in narrow-minded partisan politics, which I did. I went back and kept my Facebook page, but I deleted all the partisan stuff and just had positive unifying things like messages from this group. It's made a world of difference. So thanks. I want to add one other thing. There's this thing called The Course in Miracles I went through a while back. It's a long book, but the gist.
He's been muted. You're muted again.
Sorry, Richard, I muted you by mistake. Can you unmute yourself? There you go.
I was going to say the Course in Miracles basic one sentence conclusion is true miracles are changes in perception.
So I think we're going to take two people who have not spoken yet. First Gil, and then Kathy. Sorry if I'm skipping you right now. It's only because we want to make sure to get more voices in. Gil, go for it.
Oh, hi. I did speak. I have to admit. Yeah. Okay. I didn't hear you.
Sorry, I'm going to ask Kathy. Kathy, go for it.
Hi.
And you are muted, actually.
I thought I hit the button, sorry. About how to take this to other groups or to our communities. I've been working on that myself right now. I'm a member of the League of Women Voters in my community, and I'm in charge of programming for our what we do all year long. And one of the programs I want to do actually is to have everybody watch this documentary and then come to a group gathering kind of like this one and discuss it. But I am not going to be able to be the facilitator. I'm wondering if Braver Angels has people who would do that for us so that we could spread the word that way. It's just an idea.
Cool, thank you. Donna, I'll leave that one to you, knowing more than I do. I'm going to now call on Joe, who we haven't heard from yet, and then I'll get into the people we have heard from.
Hi, I had a couple things I wanted to add. One is that some kind of fact-checking platform that draws from a board or a group of people from very diverse points of view because I think the biggest source of the divide is the fact that people are in different information bubbles. And what I've seen in these debates and workshops and so forth, where people are speaking from supposed polarized points of view, that once they start listening to each other, they're basically good people, intelligent people. They have reasons for how they feel, but their fact base is like amazingly different. And as far as how to, and I would hope that Braver Angels is a group that could somehow seed an effort to do this. And this wasn't my idea. It was actually, I heard this from a politician years ago who was, just basically appalled at how polarized our politics are and how gridlocked the government is. The other point of how to work with this divide on a smaller scale and within your own circle. I've been working on this for many years because I have a brother who I want to have a good relationship with, who is over the top opposite in my view. And my first effort was to see him in person. We live remotely, so I knew it had to be in person. And I just said to him, I know you're a bright person. You're very kind, likable, all these good things, but I don't understand how you feel.
And Joe, I'm going to ask you to wrap up just in the next few seconds because it's been a couple minutes when you get a chance.
Right. But the basic thing was to listen. And I didn't try to make my point. I just kept asking, well, why? And that's how I discovered that the fact base is one of the roots of the problems. I did that speaking to the Amish people. I couldn't figure why religious people would support someone who seems to be of questionable moral character. And I just simply asked why, and listened.
Thank you. That's good. And I want to call on one more person that we have a big question to get to that I know people have been pushing for in the chat. So I'm going to call on Whitefire. And actually, Gil, we'll get to you as well. So just do me a favor, keep an eye on me. I'm going to hold up a minute when your minute has passed, okay? So Whitefire, go for it.
Okay, we talk about media being part of the issue, but the biggest source of the division, the biggest divide is where people don't say the needed, they say they don't need facts. Facts don't matter to them. They're just going to have the opinion that they have, and that's it. Those folks are not interested in unity. The bulk of the middle is where we want to unify. And I totally know it's possible. The other folks, they are interested as soon as they find out that they need someone for something, that there's an emergency and someone comes through for them that's a completely different politics. So that's where things change as community, working as community. That's it.
Thank you. And Gil, go for it.
Real quick, I just want to say when I joined Brave Angels about a month ago, just because I ran across it online doing research for some other work I was doing, and I joined. It was $12 a year, and then as I looked into the boards, it has a tremendous amount of training, and so I just figured I would actually just start this discussion here in my community. So that's just one way I wanted to share with everyone, that we could share it with our communities. And I never thought I'd be involved in a political discussion or group, because I'm not very crazy about politics, but I think this is very, very important to get people talking and finding common ground.
Awesome, thank you. And a question people flagged a little bit in the chat that I actually we'd written ourselves as well, is about diversity. So as we talked about earlier, there was definitely economic diversity among the quote cast members. There was obviously some racial diversity. There was some geographic diversity, limited, I realize, we only sing one of their weekends. And then we did see some age and some gender diversity. I want to ask everybody to mention, and this is a big one, I realize, what kinds of diversity did you see missing that you would have liked to see? And again, please feel free to chime in on the chat as always, because we can't cover everyone. And then given that kind of diversity that you felt was missing, what do you think it would have added to the discussion? and I am going to keep asking people to keep an eye on me for your minute, just because there's so many of us. But again, what diversity did you feel was missing, and how do you think it would have added to the discussion? Yes, Gwen, go for it.
I would have liked to have seen mixed age groups. In the very beginning, I thought, whoa, what's going on with this age? And then when I realized they had split them purposely, I would have liked to see the 20-year-old talking with the 80-year-old. I would have liked to see some mixed age groups.
80-year-olds.
Thank you. Laura, take it away.
I would have liked to see a lot more racial diversity. And as someone said earlier, like I would have liked to see someone who was a dreamer, someone who's been impacted by some of the policies that were being discussed. I'd like to see more gay, lesbian, transgendered people. It felt like it wasn't a very diverse group except for politically. And I think, really representing the electorate, I think would be really, really helpful. I thought a lot about the documentary, The Color of Fear, that was produced, I think it was in 1994, and it was 2 Black men, 2 Latino men, 2 Asian men, and 2 white men together for a weekend. And I'm sure this was a repetition of that. And it was so powerful to see people talk across those divides. So yeah, I would like to see less control and more diversity.
Yeah, definitely felt it's especially relevant. I felt like during the immigration discussion, like it would have been great to have people who had immigrated from places who were Americans not as their place of birth. It would have been helpful for me as well. I'm not seeing more input on this question among hands raised. So I am going to just briefly summarize that in the chat. People also mentioned it would have been great to see Native Americans in there. I felt similarly, actually, more from people from rural areas, and also, Asian Americans, Arab Americans, etc. So there are definitely, are limitations in the number of people, but I'm wondering, JG, if you could speak to if it was about who applied to be cast, or if you have any other sense of where, where they were coming from.
I have no idea on anybody that attempted to get on the show that didn't get on the show. They didn't share any of that information with us. There wasn't like a pile where they said, oh, these are the people we didn't take. We weren't privy to that. I don't know that there weren't any gay or lesbian people on the show. We didn't talk about sexuality. I know a lot of us had families, but there could have been, but it didn't come. I agree. It didn't come up as a subject or a topic. I do agree with that. And like I said, one of the first questions we asked when we got there is, why weren't there any African Americans in our cast? And the producers did that on purpose because they didn't want us to talk about, to have us get bogged down with race when they knew they were going to do that. So that was kind of their vision, But I am seeing a lot of good suggestions, immigrants, Native Americans. I think that would be a great idea for them to do another episode or another, extension of the show. Plan on calling Tom when we're done and telling him all these ideas. I'm writing everything down as I see it,
That's awesome.
I think they're all great ideas. You can only put so many people on, I guess, but you're right that to have all that would have been so much richer. It really would have been so much richer.
Yeah, definitely.
I agree.
Thank you. And I'm going to ask Beth and then Molly, just because y'all haven't talked yet, and then we're actually going to move to another question. So Beth, go for it.
Okay. I just wanted to mention, I thought they could have at least had someone with a disability represented in the group.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Beth, Molly, go for it.
Oh, thanks. So I just wanted to echo what someone else already said about the age diversity. I don't think it's super important. I mean, it's a little bit nitpicky, but it would have been nice just because it seems to me like the younger people have the most to learn when it comes to compromise and meeting in the middle. It seems to me like, people that are older this comes more easily to them. And I don't know if it's, age or generational difference, but I feel like people, especially people younger than me, they really struggle with this and they have the hardest time listening And so that would have been something nice, but that's all.
Yeah, thank you. And actually, Carolyn, I know you haven't spoken yet, so why don't you go quickly? And if you have your hand raised and you have spoken, we will try to get to you. Carolyn, go for it.
There we go. Two things that I just would love to say. I have been traveling around rural regions, and I just think that voice so desperately needs to be heard. And also, I want to just say young people feel that they don't have a seat at the table. So to give them a seat at the table in something like this is so vital. That's it.
Awesome. Actually, Gwen, you go for it too. We can do one more person on this question. You're okay? All right, cool. So Scott, you want to move on to the next question? We have, by the way, we have two more questions we're trying to cover, and then if we can, we'll get to anything else that we didn't get to from the chat as well.
So this is for everyone. If you remember, one of the Red Table members talked about personal responsibility as being at the core of differentiating liberals from conservatives. What do you think of that? You may have to call on people. Molly, I'm not seeing hands.
Okay, let's see. Bruce, go for it.
Yeah, hi, thank you. So this is one of my struggles, trying to understand things, because I hear, and I'm on the blue side. So I hear all this talk about how important personal responsibility is, and then I look at some of the leaders, and they totally disavow personal responsibility. Like, don't blame me, and I have such a struggle with reconciling kind of the language I hear and what I see expressed and the people that get supported. And so that I picked right up on that in the film, honestly, and I'm glad you asked the question, because that's really one of my personal struggles in all of this.
Thank you. And Scott, not everybody heard the question. Can you repeat it? And also, we're having a little struggle with people not being muted. So just in case you aren't muted, be sure to mute yourself when you aren't talking. Yeah, Scott.
Sure, I'll read it again. One of the Red Table members talked about personal responsibility as being at the core of differentiating liberals from conservatives. What do you think of that?
All right, I see Whitefire. Go for it.
I'm just going to say that personal responsibility does not stop at the end of the sleeve. And that means our responsibility is not just for me and my stuff and me and my community. We live in community. We are responsible for our response to each other. And it's the ability to respond as opposed to react. Media amps up the reaction. We could find other ways to do that.
Thank you. And let's see, someone who hasn't spoken at all, Alistair, feel free to jump in.
Okay, I'm on. I think that the gentleman who said that conservatives tend to think of individual responsibility and the left wing tends to think of responsibility for each other, I think is accurate, but I am stunned to think that one could consider one without the other. They're completely mutually reinforcing, and I didn't hear that said. I was stunned.
Yeah, definitely.
That's a good point.
We have, of the people who have not spoken yet, let's go with Annie and Jay and Prescott.
Okay, I thought that that was a really good point where in the film where someone was actually thinking out loud, it seemed to me, considering the possibility that one side or the other doesn't have the corner on the individual thinking versus group thinking. I know that individual thinking is a little bit of a leap from individual responsibility, but it really kind of gave me also the idea that, I tend to think that liberals are the ones who are the individual critical thinkers with a free mind
Whereas I came to realize, oh no, there is a definite, on the red side, it sort of made me think, oh no, they're for individual freedom more than I usually think about. That's anyway, I thought that guy was penetrating the topic a little more than the kind of, one-liners that we toss back and forth to each other across the divide.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you. I'm going to take maybe 2 or 3 more people on this question because we have one more question and we will likely do about 5 minutes on the last question. So let's go with Bonnie, you're next.
I wrote it in the chat box, but I'll say it again. I think that when people say that liberals don't have personal accountability, it's because they see us supporting safety nets and they connect those two, but that is not true. You can totally believe in personal accountability and believe in having a safety net. I also think that there's a lack of understanding of how people can be prohibited from being self-sufficient, and that what is the systems, racial injustice and all sorts of injustices that exist that cause people to not be able to stand up for themselves. And I think that people that say that progressives don't believe in personal responsibility are not acknowledging, like that conversation between the two characters, didn't recognize how much support they actually got because of their privilege. Even if they weren't very well off, they were privileged. So
yeah, thank you. I think a good takeaway from that general statement, and there are many, many awesome responses I'm hearing and seeing, is that anytime you hear an extreme statement, it's probably good to question it, like all liberals this or all conservatives this, because people are a lot more complicated than that. And a lot of times we might have those preconceptions only by not actually knowing each other. I'm gonna.
I just want to add. Oh,
yeah.
sorry. I just want to add one thing, Molly, to that one. I love what everyone said on that question. One thing I've just come to realize, and even knowing before I watched this film, in the case of personal responsibility, whether you're liberal, conservative, you're a human being first, and we all know that it is hard sometimes to take responsibility for something that you may be humiliated by, or just it's really hard to get around. So I know, regardless of your political background, it takes a lot to admit when you're wrong or to just take ownership for something. So I think that that's something everyone can agree on, regardless of background.
Yeah, thank you. Barbara, and then I hate to do this, but the other few people have their hands raised. I'd love to hear from all of you, but I don't want to keep people past about like 8:05 or so. So Barbara, why don't you go, and then the others who haven't gotten a chance to answer this, go ahead and put your answers into the chat. So
I actually think that a question about personal responsibility might be a good one for the whole team of Reds and Blues to discuss, because it would show so many things and might actually build some understandings. I got thinking about it myself. I feel like, as I'm a strong personal responsibility person and very independent, but I also can frame it that I can give other people opportunity. And when they get that opportunity with the hand up, they will take responsibility and will help others. So the perspective on what social responsibility can actually be, and there could be so many definitions.
Thank you, thank you. And I'm gonna take us to the last question here. That being said, I saw some really good questions in the chat we didn't get to. It's hard when 192 people have questions, or many of us do. So Scott, do you want to take us to home with the last question here, or set of questions rather?
Sure, I'll start this with JJ and then go on to everyone else. Going forward, do you feel these kinds of events are the most effective at bridging the political divide? What could be changed? And does this look even more challenging in the aftermath of the election?
Do I feel it could be the most effective? Sorry, Molly, go ahead.
Oh, no, you go, JJ.
So do I feel it could be the most effective? That's a great question. This is the only exercise I have participated in ever in my life to try to bridge divides, you know. It's the only thing I know how to do. I'm seeing so many great suggestions about what it could be and what it could have done. I'm leaving you guys and going right to the producer to hope he takes everybody's ideas and does keep it going. And I really hope it does work. And I think the best thing that you can do if the film meant anything to anybody is really just to try to do it in your own small circles, your family, your group of friends, you know, and ultimately, you know, hopefully it'd be like a grassroots campaign where it would catch on, you know. But I believe it starts with us, you know, and how we treat each other and respecting each other. And like I said, listening and is what's being heard. Was there a third part to your question, Scott? I'm sorry.
Yes, that's okay. I know it was a lot. Does this look even more challenging in the aftermath of the election?
Well, this is definitely an election with quite an aftermath right now, isn't it? You know, I'm taking a page out of my own book, and I'm wishing all the success in the world to President-elect Biden. You know, and I would like to see him do a good job by the country and by all of us as citizens, all of us as people. And you know, I'm one of the haters that's going to hate just because the person that I didn't vote for is in there, you know. So I'm going to follow my own advice and give him an honest chance. And that's the best thing I can do personally post-election, you know. And I don't buy any of the, you know, campaign fraud and all, you know, it's time to just let it, you know. So.
Thank you. And it looks like, yeah.
Can I just say one more thing to people who are asking if we can keep connected? Feel free to give out my, if you guys want to, I'll give it to you. I'm happy to talk with everybody. I'm reading as I'm speaking.
So I want to call on Carolyn and just mention that we are already over time about 5 minutes. So we won't have time to take more people, and try to keep your answers to around like a little shorter, like maybe 45 seconds. So Carolyn, go for it.
My hope is that we move this away from red to blue. I'm not red or blue. I'm like a socialist. So it's such an important way of looking, but I think when we just make polarities, it makes it too simple. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Christian, you are next.
Very good. Thank you so much. I mean, to me, all politics is local, and having one-on-one or one-on-many conversations for people to people, I think is definitely the most effective. I wasn't surprised by the end result of the documentary because, you know, bring people together. And I'd be curious to know, JJ, if yourself or others can make available, what was the exact process that the group went through over those 72 hours? Because to me, it seems it was obviously a brilliant process. What stood out to me was the whole perspective taking. That's something I've been resonating with for quite some time. It all depends on what your worldview is and perspective is and what you're going to come out of. What I think in terms of the last question in terms of the post-election, we can't control the politics, but we can control our own attitudes and how we reach out. And to me, that divide will continue because there's a desire by many to keep us fighting and looking at each other as enemies and not looking at who is really generating this whole divide. I don't think it's my neighbor. I don't think it's anyone on this call. I don't think it's the majority of us that are doing it. But yet we have so much energy we want to put towards that negative aspect.
Yeah, I agree. That was very well said on your last part. On the first part, what did you ask me again? What we went through as a cast from beginning to end? What specifically, was there something you were looking to know?
It was curious. To me, it's probably a recreatable process in terms of what the steps were that the folks who were doing the facilitating had the groups go through.
You know, we went through a series of exercises and even drills that never made the show. There's probably hundreds of hours of films from both the Boston group and the Chicago group that you guys just haven't had the ability to see. I'm giving out my email and whatnot. I will ask the producers if they went by a certain formula, and I can try to get that to you. Basically, for the most part, we were in a room as a group of people with a question posed to us. Well, then we were sent off into mixed groups. Sometimes it was, either all red, all blue, whatever. So they really broke it up that way. But I'll try to get you that, though, if I can.
Yeah, it sounds like JJ, want to flag, Bonnie was asking if Braver Angels could send the 72-hour program. I have no idea. I think you'd have to probably get that from the filmmaker, right?
Yeah, I don't even know if Larry ever even put 72 hours worth together. I know he's got a ton of, he's got 72 hours over 3 cameras. He's 210 hours per, he's got it. There's hundreds of hours of film that you just can't see, or
Definitely.
haven't seen.
I also want to mention that I am not sure about whether we'll be renewing nonviolent communications workshop. That was a great question, Joe. I only do the film discussions and debates. I'm not involved with the workshops. So just write Braver Angels email addresses and see about that one. If you have your hand up and you've already spoken, I'm going to ask a big favor and ask you to unraise your hand, only because I accidentally call on some people twice, and I actually want to give people who haven't spoken at all yet a chance to talk. Because there's, again, so many of us. I think what we'll probably do in the future is when we have this many people, we might break into breakout rooms. Okay, so I know, Linda, you have not spoken. So I'm going to call on you.
Hi. Whether we're talking about politics, or whether we're talking about race, or if we're talking about religion, the common denominator is listening skills. And so I just feel like these dialogues are wonderful, but they're just so small. You can only have so many people at one time. And to try to spread that across the country and make people know that we exist as Braver Angels, that's a huge task. But teaching children how to listen, I mean, it sounds so cliche to start with the kids, but if you work on listening skills from an early age, that seems like maybe the biggest bang for the buck. My 2 cents.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. And there are programs for very much older kids, like high schoolers, for instance. So that is a part of the work now. And I guess I only see 2 hands, Mary and Carolyn. If you have not spoken yet, I want you to go ahead and speak. If you have spoken, just please be forthright and tell me, because I don't know I haven't memorized everyone who's spoken. So I have Mary, Carolyn. Have you guys already spoken?
So
Okay,
I was the one that spoke about having an immigrant on. So I'll give the floor to somebody else.
Thank you. I saw, Carolyn, go for it.
Well, my name is Carolyn Lukensmeyer. I was one of the designers of the process that JJ has been talking with you about. The co-producers were Tom Cosgrove and Larry Anderson. And I want to go back to Scott's question about, given the way this particular election has occurred, will what we have to do in the country be even more difficult? And first, I'd like to say that I think we all really need to stop and celebrate what an extraordinary expression of the sacred duty of voting this election actually was. Given Trump's choices about how he responded to it, we've swept right by the fact that 160 million people voted, and the passion on both sides. It is what our republic, our democratic republic, is all about. And we really should be profoundly grateful for that. The next thing I want to say is, whether you voted for him or not, Biden did have his closing message be the necessity of bridging our divides and reestablishing some kind of unity in this country. And I know all of you who are engaged in Braver Angels and many other organizations who are doing terrific bridging work believe in this and know how important it is. The sentence I'd want to leave you with is, Biden can't possibly do that without we, the people, in very large numbers joining that effort. And the words I like to say is, we saw the largest political activism around a presidential election in modern political history. We, the people, just did that. And now we need to turn that into what I would call citizen leadership and governance. How JJ said this before, but we're all in circles of influence. We all know people who are still holding on to beliefs that aren't true. We all know people who are still demonizing one another. So how do we, in our circles of influence, create the safe spaces for people to risk the primary principle of the design of what we did with Divided We Fall is meeting people as human beings first, not in advocacy positions. Learning to listen well enough to actually understand, why did your life experience lead you to like the wall? And my life experience led me to hate the wall. And the point in the end is about how we understand who each other is. Thank you. And thank you to the Braver Angels for actually holding this discussion.
So I'm seeing in the chat, thank you. I'm seeing Lisa, Amy, Lou, Tony, and Alistair. And again, I'm just gonna say, go ahead and unraise your hand if you've already spoken. Lisa, we were gonna keep it, just because we're over, I'm gonna ask Lisa to keep it pretty short here.
Lisa, unmute yourself, Lisa.
Okay, thank you. First of all, I want to say I'm a therapist, so my work involves bringing things to the surface so people can address them and heal from them. So one of the beautiful things that is going on in this country and actually the globe is that a lot of things that have been festering underneath are now rising to the surface, and we can all see it, which is one of the reasons why so many people have gotten involved. So now we know what's going on and we can work for change. Thanks.
Awesome. And Tony, you have not spoken yet, I believe.
Thanks. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Thanks. I think this is all very powerful. I think it's, from my perception, it's mostly contained within the kinds of modalities that are about deep interpersonal things, which of course makes sense, but alongside it, more training on some of the reflective practices that allow people to do more listening and reflection for themselves and to be able to then respond would add much more strength to this. I know that some of that modalities have been included in other Brave Angels, but I would really highlight raising them up. And many of them are found at places like the Center for Courage and Renewal, right? That teach the kinds of practices that are parallel but different to these, that allow people to really be honest with themselves instead of just reacting like pinballs to what they're hearing from other people.
And I'm going to thank you. I'm going to call on Amy as well.
Hi. I think that this piece of understanding and listening and communicating and hearing people is super important, and I love it. And I have been successful with some people who are not of my political beliefs with this kind of communication. But at the same time, I think we neglect to talk about policies. You might say, oh, I love everybody and I know. Well, this policy that you're voting for is oppressing people, or this policy is affecting. So it's like, how can we get, how can we incorporate that so we're understanding and listening and being respectful? But like someone was saying earlier about getting different information, but it seems like, yeah, I can listen to you, but when you tell me, oh yeah, I think gay people shouldn't get married, or what, some policy that's like, that's my family you're talking, how do you get past when the policy, I can listen to you, but if the policies are hurtful, how do you, do you just say, okay, where do you go with that piece?
Thank you. Alistair, I believe you have not spoken either, and I see your hand raised. Is Alistair there? All right, moving to Scott Freeman.
I have spoken once, but I'd like to very quickly say that the lady who said we have great cause for celebration in the turnout for this election And the fact that it was a well-conducted election, despite efforts to denigrate it, is hugely important. It's a very hopeful sign. That's all.
Thank you. And Scott, have you spoken? I see you're one of the last people we have on here as well. Scott Freeman, going once, going twice. All right.
No, I have not spoken.
Thank you. Okay, great.
Sorry, I couldn't figure out how to unmute. I just have a quick suggestion for how we can bring this, what we can do on a small scale. And I say because it's something I've been doing. For me, one of the most interesting parts of the movie was when the red table was talking amongst themselves and the blue table was talking amongst themselves, and they were saying things they probably wouldn't have said to the other group. They were sort of admitting things because they felt like they were among friends. And so I would just say, I've been talking to my conservative friends, challenging talking points that are kind of, wrong or butt-headed or untrue. And I think they tend to receive them more from me than they would from somebody from across the divide. So I think that's something we can each do with our circles. It's kind of counterintuitive because it's not reaching across the divide, but I think we can keep each other honest within our groups and talk about, facilitate and encourage listening and not being so dogmatic, not being so, unreasonable in the way that we think about things.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Lieb, have you spoken? You're our last person there.
No, I haven't. Yeah, I guess I hate to say this, but I'm just feeling discouraged at the idea of really arranging or organizing conversations like was depicted in that film. I was actually trying for 4 years to find some Trump voters to talk to, and I could say that I could count the number of conversations on one hand. And I'm going to be at a Thanksgiving dinner in a couple days where we'll sit there for several hours and not say boo about politics, because those are the ground rules.
Great. I think we are closing out. Looks like Donna has something to say.
Right. So Lou, I hear you. And all I can tell you is that Braver Angels, our bread and butter workshop, is called the Red Blue Workshop. An even number of reds and blues get together. And for structured conversations, it is a phenomenal experience. And you can either participate as red or a blue, or you can observe. We finally got that online. It was a hard one to put online. We've got it up. So we are doing it. And I hope that you can at least observe, if not participate, in a Red Blue workshop.
Thank you. And thank you everybody for some really brilliant ideas and really thoughtful and thought-provoking comments tonight. We're definitely going to save the chat. I'll see if one of the facilitators can do that to send out. There were a lot of fantastic ideas in there. I also want to mention that we do these monthly. So you can be part of organizing these, coming up with films. You can be part of facilitating. We'd love more facilitators. And also want to mention one more time that Braver Angels is already in many ways doing the work that's pictured in the film. We don't all have the chance to be part of a 2-day workshop or 72-hour workshop. It would be awesome. But since a lot of this work is happening, hopefully people will find ways to tap into it locally as well. If you don't know, we have about, like 60 local alliances, I believe, around the country. You can also start an alliance pretty easily in your area. And while a lot of those are online, you can do local stuff even online, of course. I also want to mention one more plug that if you're able to support the work of Braver Angels, there is this link that I'm putting in the chat now to do so. And lastly, I just put out there that this was not, I don't know if people realize that this was not an easy experience for all the people in the film. I'm not sure how much JJ can speak to this more than me, but basically you could see this was a real hard thing for people to do. This is not easy work. This is hard, emotional, tough work where we have to do self-critique, right? As much as critiquing the other person's ideas. And I think someone in the chat made a really good point. Forgive me, I don't remember who it was out of the hundreds of wonderful comments we've seen tonight, but someone made the point that if you're not willing to be flexible, to change your own ideas, to look at yourself critically, then it's hard to imagine expecting other people to do so. So it's hard, but you have to, and it's hard for me too, but you want to try to, we all have to kind of approach any of these conversations with like so much humility, and it can be painful at times. And I guess I want to invite people to join our, like I said, our film discussion group and to join future debates. Those have been incredible. There also has been a lot of diversity in some of those debates. I know Braver Angels overall is trying to massively improve its diversity, and I have seen the fruition of that work in some of our debates. And it's been really powerful to see people speak across a lot of different ethnic backgrounds, for instance, and a lot more. I've seen a lot of age diversity in those as well. I've seen people calling from rural Alaska. You know, it's great. So definitely want to encourage people to step in. And if you, I guess, anyone's, Donna, JJ, Scott, want to chime in with any final comments?
I would just say you're right. In the beginning, it was a pretty difficult experience. It wasn't on, well, actually it was a small part of it made the film. I was kind of accused of being an intolerant person because of the way I voted. And I was really hurt by that. You know, I love you, you know, and I only like you if you're a jerk, and I don't care what color you are or what your background is. If you're a jerk, that's, you know, that's it. It was really hurtful to me, and I just think, and I wish that we didn't see each other like that. But geez, you're blue, you must tolerate people. Red, you must be prejudiced. I think that's such a sad state of affairs, and I don't look at anybody like that. I was really hurt that I was viewed like that, you know. So I don't work extra hard to let people know that. I just, if you know me personally, you know who I am, you know. But it was kind of a tough thing for me to go through with that, you know. But as far as this panel tonight, I couldn't thank you all enough for letting me participate. And I'm reading as I speak. You know, I know I might sound like I'm talking all over the place a little bit, but there's just you guys have so many members and so many intelligent people, so many great questions that could make the next show, you know. So thank you all very much. I'm really glad to be here tonight. And it was great to see you again, Carol. And thanks, everybody.
Thank you, JJ, for putting yourself on the spot again. And thanks to our folks who held out for a while. We did go over. We might have to rethink the scheduling here of these because we always tend to have more people interested than we can fit in. Donna, do you have anything final you want to mention, or Scott?
I would like to say, please go to our website and click on Find an Event at the top. And that's where you will see all of the free workshops that are coming up. You can click on a workshop and you can register and go ahead and attend. There'll be more. You just keep going back and you'll see more and more being scheduled. We'd love to see you at one or two or three or four of our workshops.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.